So this was a week where we discovered that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has a sugar daddy with a Nazi fetish. And if that sounds a little wrong, it's because it is, all right? And thanks to reporting by ProPublica, we know that Clarence Thomas has been accepting gifts and lavish vacations from real estate billionaire Harlan Crow, which that name is just the most Disney villain name I've heard. Harlan Crow. Like, and also more like Marlon Jim Crow. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be real. So let's go into what a little bit of what the reporting says and who this guy is. So for more than 2 decades, Thomas accepted luxury trips virtually every year from this Dallas businessman without disclosing them. A public servant, this is according to Politico, who has a salary of $285,000. He's vacationed on Crow's super yacht around the globe. He flies on Crow's Bombardier Global 5000 jet. He has gone with Crow to the Bohemian Grove, the exclusive California all-male retreat. I don't want to know. And Crow's sprawling ranch in East Texas. And Thomas typically spends about a week every summer at Crow's private resort in the Adirondacks. So I feel like they're close. This is a regular thing. It's very much like they have like a Google calendar that's like who's going to be at the estate on which day, you know, and it's like a shared thing. And it's like, well, Ginni and I want to go to the Adirondacks on Memorial Day, like that. You know, there's a shared Google calendar is what I'm trying to say. So ProPublica, this is fascinating, Mike. ProPublica uncovered the details of Thomas's travel by drawing from flight records, internal documents distributed to Crow's employees, and interviews with dozens of people ranging from his super yacht staff to members of the secretive Bohemian Club to an Indonesian scuba diving instructor. The trail of breadcrumbs that they just started picking away at. And getting like, yeah, the super yacht staff, which immediately reminds me of, did you see Triangle of Sadness, the movie? That movie? It's the only, other than Everything Everywhere all at Once, is the only other Oscar film that I saw. And it's hilarious. And it's a lot of it takes place in a yacht. And it's about like the super rich and all the people who work on the yacht and like working for tips and stuff. It's a story of haves and have-nots. Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. It's actually very funny. But anyway, okay. So that's what was going on. Obviously, this is in addition to other stuff that Thomas has done, not recusing himself from the election fraud trial or the cases that involved his wife, basically, in efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The other thing recently, I believe he was a former he worked for a far-right Christian group. His name is Shank. I think it was something like Robert Shank. I did a story on this. I should know it better. But he basically was like, went before Congress and whistle blew on the fact that he was actively lobbying members of the Supreme Court, like justices. And he was like, I don't think this is right. We were lobbying them for anti-choice measures, obviously. And he spoke about how he interacted with Clarence Thomas and how Clarence Thomas said, keep up the good work. So this fool is corrupt from top to bottom. And okay, a little bit before I get your response, who is Crow, Harland Crow? He's been a major Republican donor for decades, given more than $10 million in publicly disclosed political contributions, but he's also given to groups that keep their donors secret, like dark money groups. And he said, I don't disclose what I'm not required to disclose, he once told the Times. He has deep connections in conservative politics. He's an heir to a real estate fortune. He oversees his family's business empire and recently named Marxism as his greatest fear, along with spiders. It's heights, spiders, and the woke mind virus. He was an early patron of the powerful anti-tax group Club for Growth and has been on the board of American Enterprise Institute for over 25 years. He also sits on the board of the Hoover Institution. Yeah, just like tick off the evil. I mean, talk about cabals, like the evil boardrooms. He's on them. Check, 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 check. So this is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez speaking on on this corruption and on this story. And I think a lot of people, it's funny because like there's a new line, which is AOC is like now part of the establishment. Like she's been institutionalized, and it's like not so fast. She's openly saying that that Clarence Thomas should be impeached. So here she is on CNN.
And receiving these sorts of gifts after he was appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States. I think that in and of itself indicates a very, very serious problem. And then on top of that, he is now implicating his colleagues. And I do believe that Chief Justice John Roberts must now come forward and state if he allows and is allowing this kind of very serious corruption to happen on this court. I think, when it comes to Justice Thomas's statement, when he's talking about his colleagues and when he's talking about who advised him to break the law, I think we need to know who those people are.
Okay, so she's referring to this statement in which Thomas basically said that he and his wife, Ginni, were just dearest friends and were sort of personal hospitality from close friends, and that he was advised, this is the part she had issue with, that he was advised that it did not require disclosure. So he was told he didn't have to tell anybody that he was doing all these things and receiving these, I'm assuming, free vacations. Mike, do we have you back?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. The nightmare has been averted. I woke up. No, I was going to say that it's shocking to me because our corruption laws in this country are already so lax, right? So to not disclose these things, which is all Clarence Thomas had to do, that would have put him in compliance with ethics rules. Right. But the Supreme Court, they have a code of conduct where they're supposed to avoid the perception of impropriety. So it's optional, really. But you do have to disclose gifts. Now, members of Congress, if they take a gift more than $50, that has to be approved by an ethics committee. So Supreme Court justices, they don't have to do that. All they have to do is, if they accept the gift, they disclose it. And Clarence Thomas, for decades, has not done that. And it's shocking to me to see some of the mental gymnastics to defend Clarence Thomas here. I saw an op-ed in The Hill. I can't remember who wrote it, but it was basically, well, Clarence Thomas is allowed to have friends. And I just love that take so much because it's so delusional and naive at the same time. First and foremost, they were not friends before he became a Supreme Court justice. Right. He got on the court, and then all of a sudden, conspicuously, Harlan Crow was like, hey, would you like to go on my super yacht? Which I didn't know was a thing.
That's so judgmental of you. How do you know without all the, without the robes and everything, just Mr. Thomas, not Justice Thomas. I'm sure Harlan would have been friends with him. They struck a conversation up at a deli or something.
Their love of, well, this is like the 90s when they met. So their love of Super Mario Bros. 3, that's what really got them to become friends. It was an organic conversation around
super organic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a laughable story, and we all know that nothing's going to come of this. And what I love is just like the collective reaction to everyone that's just like, yeah, I'm not surprised, because it's so unsurprising. I mean, the Supreme Court is cartoonishly corrupt. We just found out from that same religious person, I can't remember his name that you referenced, but that basically Justice Alito was leaking opinions to right-wing donors. So you have that coupled with this, along with Clarence Thomas's refusal to recuse himself. And it's just a joke.
Yeah, that's the Shank story. The Thomas stuff with Shank was an aside, but you're absolutely right. He was the one who blew the whistle basically on the leaks coming from Alito's team around the Dobbs decision. And you're totally right. Here's my question though. You got 9 Supreme Court justices, 9 people control all of our fates. They're the most powerful people in this country, arguably, and definitely above the president. You think they're not going to be corrupt? I mean, no one should have that much power. Like, there's part of me that's like, yeah, I don't know. Who the F else are they going to hang out with, right? Like, they're going to hang out with other billionaires and powerful people who are going to try and buy them off. And there you go. And I totally agree that, like, yeah, of course they're supposed to have friends. And this is why we need a massive overhaul of the Supreme Court. There should be, now I'm like, it's definitely term limits, number one. 20 years of this? God, you know how many beach towels he's used at the vacation homes. You know how many like summer salads that is? I don't know. I don't know how to measure time.
I don't know what rich people do.
I don't know what rich people do either. I'm just like, there's good salads probably from what I've seen. Anyway, but it's very funny to see all the people who are defending him. I don't know if you have any personal faves, but this is everyone's rushing to defend Harlan Crow and rushing to defend Clarence Thomas. But let's before we do that, let's talk about why, because there's other interesting parts of Harlan Crow and things that you should know about him, which is that in one of his homes, and I guess in his main estate, he has a ton of Nazi memorabilia. Yeah, and not just in like a weird bunker or like under lock and key. No, just on display. He has filled his property with mementos, he says, because he hates communism and fascism. Sure. Right. When I hate things, I look, you know, like I said, I hate Joe Rogan. That's why I have like his album covers just displayed prominently everywhere. Like what? Nonetheless, his collections caused an uproar back in 2015 when Marco Rubio attended a fundraiser at Crow's house on the eve of Yom Kippur, and Rubio's critics thought the timing was inappropriate given, you know, the Hitler stuff. So this is someone who visited his home says, I still can't get over the collection of Nazi memorabilia. It would have been helpful to have someone explain the significance of all the items. Without that context, you just sort of gasp when you walk into the room. One memorable aspect was the paintings, something done by George W. Bush next to a Norman Rockwell, next to one by Hitler. They also said it was startling and strange to see dictator sculptures in the backyard. That's right. So the other thing he's got a yard full of dictator sculptures. Like, to be fair, like Mao is in there. So, you know, it's like folks from the left and the right. I think Stalin's up there. But like, what the fuck?
Very normal things. You know, I too have a bunch of stuff in my house that I hate. I have a bust of Mitch McConnell right here. It's off camera. You can't see it.
Oh, right. Just keeps you humble, right? Looking over at that gullet.
Yeah. the turkey neck is just, you know, inspiration. Yeah, it's very, very strange. Dare I say it's a little bit sus, just a tiny bit. It just adds to the layer of insanity of the overall story where he's buttering up Supreme Court justices and he has Nazi stuff in his house.
Yeah.
What's going on? What are we doing here? I don't even know how to react to this because it's so bizarre to me.
Who do we think this person is, right? Like, clearly, this person is someone who is a white nationalist. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it is, again, oh God, you don't hang out with powerful billionaires and also have Nazi memorabilia and not be a little bit of a, you know, fashy poo yourself. Like, that's just what it is. And these are people, okay, so we're going to get into a little bit of it, but like, let's just look at these memorabilia. Here we have, I don't know, a giant emblem with, you know, just a couple of, I don't know what that is. Is that a plate? It looks like it's a plate for a car. There's a bunch of Hitler stamps. That's cute. You know, just for my stamp collection, soup's normal. Here's some hand napkins, I believe, or just regular napkins with the Nazi symbol on them. Also very, very normal. But they're like, no, you don't do that. Like, not even in the 90s. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm like, at what point? It was never okay to do this. Like, ever since World War II ended, not okay to do this. But again, I just want to say the Nazi stuff is an aside. The real thing is that not only are you hanging out with Harlan Crow, sorry, I said Marlon Crow earlier. It's Harlan, which is even better, a better Disney villain name. So correction on that. But a guy named Leonard Leo, and Leonard Leo is one of the masterminds, if you will, of the far right takeover of our courts and specifically the Supreme Court. And I remember doing a story on Leonard Leo for Newsbroke back in the day, and I didn't have a chance. I was like, what do we? But he's like, he works with the judicial, what is it? The Judicial Watch or something like that. Basically, they're all responsible not only for creating a pathway for people like Amy Coney Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh and those folks to, go from law school to clerking for Bush to then becoming appointed, all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that also they put up these phony ass fucking cases that have done things like undermine our civil rights, undermine abortion rights, undermine LGBTQ rights, right? Like they're the ones who are buttering up like plaintiffs to try and go at some of our established laws. And Leonard Leo has been behind the scenes, and there are photos of Clarence Thomas hanging with Leonard Leo. Again, this all the same soup. They're all in the same fucking soup. Harlan Crow. But here's my question. What's going to be done about this? Mike, any thoughts? Do you believe that this call for impeachment? I mean, I want to put up, actually, not only did I play that little clip from AOC, but she did tweet, if we do not impeach when lifetime appointees repeatedly break the law in stunning shows of corruption, if we do not rein in systematic abuse of judicial overreach, and if we rely on this, and if all we rely on is for those abusing power to police themselves, we have no one else to blame. It must stop.
Yeah, well said.
I mean, I'm reminded, though, of what you said earlier, which is you just have to disclose this. Like, all he has to do is say that he did these things. And people are going to be like, oh, I hope you had a nice time. I hope that was like, and I'm sure there's a good summer salad at that sprawling estate. Thank you for letting us know. I'll proceed with doing nothing. Like that's the consequence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, I agree with AOC here. I don't think that nothing is going to come of this, unfortunately. Because we have a judiciary that's gone rogue because they know that they can go rogue and there's no accountability for overt corruption. The problem is that what they don't realize is that, the court, the whole system is kind of a house of cards, right? Because it only functions because of legitimacy. Like, who gave the Supreme Court the power to do judicial review? The Supreme Court. Who is going to enforce their decisions if they have no legitimacy? They don't have like judicial police that arrests people for not listening to them when they issue a ruling. So if they lose their legitimacy, the institution as a whole crumbles. And when that institution falls, other institutions fall as well. So we're really, like, by not holding them accountable, we're really in dangerous territory.
Yes.
But I still don't think that anything will come of this, unfortunately, because again, when you've gotten away with this for decades, I mean, it's not like they're subtle, right?
No,
with the
they're
leakers, with all these conflicts of interest. I just feel like I would be more surprised if anything came of this.
Absolutely. They're rubbing it in our faces. And I think the scariest thing for me is here you have an open, behind the scenes, all of these think tanks, all of these groups, all of these dark money, actors who have been politicizing the courts very, very openly, very, very deliberately, and very consciously. And now they're winning. And as we said, we're seeing the fruits of their labor. And then on the other side, you have Democrats who are like so overly concerned and worried about politicizing the court when that's exactly what needs to be done, because we've the tablecloth is slid off this, unstable ass, like, whatever, nightstand of America. It's so far to the right. We're trying to pull that shit back to the middle. And then we get called like we're politicizing things when we're just trying to rebalance and recenter stuff. Right.
Yeah.
You're like, man, your nightstand shit's all over the floor. You know what I'm saying? We got to pull that back. But then you're like, oh no, you're politicizing it. Like, well, it needs to be a little bit politicized, but then it just becomes this eternal ping pong back and forth, and I think in a lot of other countries, that's when political legitimacy and any kind of institutional legitimacy, if it hadn't already been lost, is lost when the courts become so politicized that there is no faith. And then the courts simply become a battleground to score back and forth. Right. So this shit is not going anywhere. And it's sort of, again, I just wish we had stopped it before we had gotten to this fucking point. Last thing, yes, there's calls from Democrats to open an investigation into John Roberts, who may or may not have given the green light into this. A retired judge, sort of speaking to what Mike was saying, a Republican appointee judge who's retired now told CNN that it made him livid. This is precisely why the public respect for the Supreme Court has plummeted, the judge said. This is far greater than mere ethics violations. It's about a perceived legitimacy of the Supreme Court. Yeah. And a bunch of ghouls are defending Harlan. Now I can't say it right. A bunch of ghouls are defending Harlan Crow. Charles Murray, who wrote The Bell Curve, which is debunked BS theory about like why poor people are stupid. It's basically what it says. Like, why poor and brown people are dumb. The Bell Curve by Charles Murray. It's like a hop, skip, and a jump away from phrenology. That he's out there like, Harlan is a great friend of mine.
That'll help him.
Just this show is fragile billionaires. Like that's what the theme of today's show is.
They are fragile, aren't they? You know, something that you said really resonated with me to my core. Like if I were a billionaire, you would never hear from me. I would be on my yachts, and I would have in that yacht like a separate pool with a mini yacht that I would be in, like just because I could. I mean, I just why do you've won capitalism, you've won the game of life. Why can't you just sail off into the sunset and just let the normies and the peasants have a little bit of crumbs? You know, it's just frustrating.
We know why. Because if we lived in a fair system and you fairly made your money, you would just fuck off into the night and you'd be happy and you'd leave people alone. You wouldn't have to buy the political system. You wouldn't tweet about it. You wouldn't feel fragile. You wouldn't, do all of these things. But if you deep down know that you are a greedy POS who spent their years exploiting your workers, doxing dumping your toxic sludge in rivers, then all you can focus on is like, how do I escape the feeling that I've cheated this system and everybody who's dealt with me and I've dealt with? That's fucking why. That's fucking why. Because they know. They know. And they have to rewrite the laws to retroactively make what they're doing seem totally great and legal and wonderful. And they got to control everybody. I mean, obviously, I think it's, like hoarding and greed is honestly a little bit of an illness. Anyway, what's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.